The hidden history. Wow. Hey, much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Hope you guys are doing good. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We live. Thank you for tuning in, taking the time to do that. Always very appreciative of you guys doing that, taking the time to hear me out, reading and all that, and going on this journey with me, doing the research together. We dreaming awake, yeah. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Hey, millennials, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Uh, Welcome, Awakened One, to the club, to the Kurimeo club. Appreciate you, millennials, for that. Today, guys, we're gonna do a little recap of some old world uh, in America information with some added new things. You guys know I got a lot of new subscribers. People don't go back and watch the old videos, but we try to remind them of certain things. A lot of these clips are from videos that are like really long, 2, 3 hours, and they're like in between somewhere real quick, and maybe a lot of people forget. So if you have seen some of these clips, it might be a little refresher that might help you out. So we're just gonna go ahead and get started right away. No matter who's here yet, we're gonna just get started. And yeah, we're gonna go over some pretty interesting info. Okay, so welcome. Proving America's a true old world, or part of the old world, like when it comes to creating civilization in ancient times. America had a big role in that. Wow, wow. Welcome. Let's get started.
The Hidden History of the Human Race by Michael Kurimeo. In part 1 of The Hidden History of the Human Race, we look closely at the vast amount of controversial evidence that contradicts current ideas about human evolution. We recount in detail how this evidence has been systematically suppressed, ignored, or forgotten, even though it is qualitatively and quantitatively equivalent to the evidence favoring currently accepted views on human origins. When we speak of suppression of evidence, we are not referring to scientific conspirators carrying out a satanic plot to deceive the public. Instead, we are talking about an ongoing social process of knowledge filtration that appears quite innocuous but has a substantial cumulative effect. Certain categories of evidence simply disappear from view, in our opinion, unjustifiably. This pattern of data suppression has been going on for a long time. In 1880, J.D. Whitney, the state geologist of California, published a lengthy review of advanced stone tools found in California gold mines. The implements, including spear points and stone mortars and pestles, were found deep in mine shafts, underneath thick, undisturbed layers of lava. Informations ranging from 9 million to over 55 million years old.
All right, we're going to continue here reading another article, this time from the Ancient American Magazine. This is Volume 1, Issue number 3, and this one's called Stones of Atlantis, all right? Says here, Ancient Egyptians of New Mexico, by Barbara Holly Rock. In April 1991, my colleagues and I first viewed the inscription carved on gray limestone atop a narrow valley with about a 1,000-foot drop to the valley floor. The view from the site was immense. We could see both north up the narrowed valley for several miles and south down to the open plain horizon. Access to this site is up the west side of the mountain trail cut by wagon tracks, then across the mountaintop by foot to a narrow ledge facing west. A month later, other members returned to take infrared photographs of the inscription and to make a plastic mold. The inscription is precisely drafted with evenly spaced characters on visible straight lines. The salutation, on, is left and above the three-line message. The right of the bottom line is another complex character which I will refer to as the signature. Another complex symbol is below the three lines. Since we were then affiliated with Fell's Epigraphic Society, I asked for opinions to the origin and date of the inscription. 3 opinions were offered concerning only its national origin: Hmong, Western Ojibwas, Indian, and Demotic Egyptian. None were offered for the translation or possible date. So real quick, this is some of the inscription right here. You guys can see. All right, just a photograph. Let me just go back to the article. It says Gloria Farley gave us a copy of the article, Egyptian and Hmong Clues to a Western American Petroglyph Group. By the late Dr. Paul Cheeseman and David Tomlinson, we learned that the inscription made of 19 different symbols had 10 matches to those shown by Cheeseman and Tomlinson. Therefore, there was 55% probability that our inscription may have the same language base as the Hmong inscriptions. But what was the Hmong's language base? The Western Ojibwa's origin of the inscription was researched and discarded because the Ojibwas originated around the Great Lakes area of Canada, making it doubtful that they were ever ranged from Southern California through the mountains eastward into New Mexico and Colorado. They practiced intermarriage not only with all their neighboring Indian tribes, but also with other races, French trappers, all right? With the who? With the Huguenots? With the French, yeah, Black French. Therefore, their language would be a borrowed mixture from many sources. The Ojibwas, symbols and meanings from William Tompkins' Indian Sign Language made gibberish when applied to our 3-line inscription. Since 25% of our petroglyphic symbols were mentioned in Tompkins' book, I discarded this as a national origin source. The third opinion, Demotic Egyptian, has been the best suggestion to determine a meaning and to point to a relevant national source. All of our symbols, 100% of them, were found in the Egyptian language sources that we consulted, okay? This is Egyptian hieroglyphics they're finding here in New Mexico. But then they break down what hieroglyphic writing is here and what time periods and what demotic means and from what Egyptian kingdom it comes from. He says demotic writing originated in northern Egypt and it was used by Herodotus and other Greeks for writing daily documents. So this is what they're finding here, okay? They're giving you the time frame of this possible Egyptian inscription here in New Mexico. Again, things they never tell us. Here they are right here. And you guys can do the comparison on your own. But yeah, this is a supposed translation, right? Greetings, hail integrity, village, time to live, as signposts of death by last inundation had broken the authority from crescent moon to crescent moon for a month, to be in front of or lead a return to cut the clouds above, at the end time to live. Offerings and sacrifices are the way one's love. Seems like sign about a flood and survival. We're going to get into this book, The Search for Lost America, The Mysteries of the Stone Ruins, Salvatore Michael Trento, all right? In chapter 3, page 39, it says here, in the 1940s, the late Dr. William Walker Strong, a professor of physics, collected a number of cubical blocks of stone from a plowed field in the vicinity of Dillsburg, Pennsylvania. The stones bore several kinds of grooves and markings, which for years went unexplained, save for Dr. Strong's insistence that some of the obscure patterns resembled Phoenician letters. He had originally thought the markings were ancient script because many of the stone blocks bore grooves which were deep and appeared to be alphabetic in design. There's finding an inscribed axe in Pemberton, New Jersey. All right, and this is the people involved: the American Ethnological Society, the American Ethnological Proceedings, Dr. Evans' letter that he sent there. And this is the inscriptions they're talking about right here. Dr. Feld interpreted the markings as follows. The script is Tartessian. The language is Iberic. This is what it was found there in New Jersey, all right? Iberic. On an axe. Stand firm, on guard, parry, close in, and strike. For the vocabulary, he went to a standard Arabic dictionary. His analysis is shown below. All right? Arabic. Look at that. The inscriptions on the Pemberton stone axe cannot be scoffed at. For further up the Delaware River, we have evidence of other stone inscribed with markings also believed to be Iberic script. It says here inscribed amulets from Delaware Water Gap, New Jersey. There have been other inscribed stones found in abundance in the Delaware River Valley. As usual, regional archaeologists, unable to explain the meaning of the etched symbols, have simply put the artifacts aside. All right, so I just want to show some of the images here of what they were just talking about. So this is the phallic amulet, Delaware Water Gap, New Jersey. Right, these are the inscriptions on it. This is a stone found at Inwood, a wooded section of northwest Manhattan in 1894. It says that it may be a vowelless form of Ogham. Let me back up real quick. You guys can see. Again, they found that in Manhattan. And they're saying that that alphabet may have been used by Iberian Celts as early as 800 BC. All right, they found that in Manhattan. Back in the book, The Lost History of Ancient America by Frank Joseph. Chapter 22, Georgia's Ancient City of Shells by Gary C. Daniels. 6 hours via driving southeast of Atlanta, 7 miles off the Georgia coast. Archaeologists have unearthed the remains of an ancient walled city predating the construction of Egypt's pyramids on Sapelo Island, known as the Sapelo Shell Ring Complex. It was an urban site constructed about 2017 BC. In 3 districts or neighborhoods, each surrounded by circular walls 20 feet in height and constructed from hundreds of tons of seashells. Some of the earliest pottery ever found in North America was retrieved from the ruined city, which stood in contradiction to local, contemporary Native Americans unfamiliar with agriculture, generally regarded by scholars as fundamental prerequisite for civilization. That these simple tribal inhabitants somehow made the leap from hunting and gathering to civilization in a single bound, produced not only a walled city, but also the new technology of pottery, without benefit of agriculture, seems improbable. More likely, a far more advanced people already in the possession of a high culture arrived on the Georgia coast to organize their massive shell rings, but their identity and motivation for settling in Sapelo are unknown. All right, so they don't know who it is, so how can they tell you who it's not, right? Drop Nation, so they're always gonna, again, this Arthur keeps thinking with Mesopotamia and the true old world's on the other side. So that's what he tries to relate when he finds all these things here, right? Those are his opinions. But the truth is, they did find this ancient seashell monument city with walls and everything here off the coast of Georgia. At that time, Akkadian summer collapsed in the Middle East, and Dead Sea water levels reached their lowest point. In China, the Hongsan culture collapsed. Sediments from Greenland and Iceland show a cold peak about 2200 BC. The population of Finland decreased by a third between 2400 and 2000 BC. In Turkey's Anatolia region, including the site of ancient Troy, more than 350 archaeological sites show evidence of having been burned and deserted by the close of the 22nd century BC. Entire regions suddenly reverted to a nomadic way of life after thousands of years of settled agricultural life. In fact, most locations throughout the ancient Old World that collapsed before 2100 BC evidence unambiguous signs of natural calamities and or rapid abandonment. What happened then that could have caused such widespread devastation? Answers might come from the sky. Dracons ain't playing, huh? Now, going a little ahead because they start talking about space and all that. It says here, when Hernando de Soto first explored Georgia in 1540, he found it occupied by two indigenous peoples, the Timucua. Indians had migrated there from South America, remember? We kind of read that in my navigational videos, as indicated by their linguistic affinities with native Venezuelans. Did Timucua ancestors flee their homeland after it was devastated by a meteor swarm? Argentina's Rio Cuarto impact craters date the period in question. The Yuchi Indians believe their forefathers arrived in Georgia after the old moon broke and devastated their island homeland in the Bahamas. The abrupt appearance of a shell-ringed city at Georgia's Sapelo Island shortly after these catastrophic events tend to confirm Yuchi oral tradition. So I just wanted to quickly read that. I thought it was interesting. This shell city that we never know about had walls 20 feet high. Come on. Chapter 9, Drowned Village of the Ancient Copper Miners by Wayne and May. 3,200 years ago, Upper Michigan's enigmatic copper miners left behind some 5,000 pits and in excess of 1 million stone tools, but no trace of their towns has ever been found until the discovery of a village site 10 fathoms beneath the surface of Wisconsin Lake. Due to the site's untouched, if presently unguarded condition, its exact position is concealed as some measure of protection. The ruins were found in June 2011 by Scott Mitchum. All right, this guy actually has been finding a lot of things. He's come out in a lot of TV shows, ABC, a lot of things, explaining his discoveries, logs, huge logs being cut, he found in lakes and things like that. He's the owner of the Superior Water Log Company operating in Wisconsin, Canada, and Brazil. Mitchum said, I had never looked in deep water off the island point, but knew the rocky shore gradually sloped down, but previously only covered the first 20 to 30 feet around the island, not in depth. As I got closer, I slowed to an idle and waited until I could see the bottom. I knew I had extra visibility, so I would be able to view greater depths. As the rocky bottom started to appear, something immediately caught my eye, a formation of piled rocks. I got the max, put it on, and dumped my face overboard to see mounds and circles of stone perfectly stacked. All right, here's a picture of it, the grouped rocks right here, as he's saying. I quickly returned to shore, tied up the boat, and put on my diving suit. The sun was already down, so I didn't have much time. I swam back to where the boat had been hovering earlier and could faintly make out dark structures lining the bottom in every direction, but declining light conditions terminated my dive. The next day, June 23rd, I arrived back at the site around 2:30 in the afternoon. Conditions were windy, with lots of pollen on the water, so visibility was not the greatest. I put on my scuba gear and dove with a camera in hand. As I swam down to the largest mound, I could see a dark, long pile of rocks, its vicinity littered with hammers and other stone tools, including what appeared to be a wood planer made from some sort of marble-like non-local stone. I logged the site via my global positioning system. All right, so here's one example of he's talking about a sunken circle with a small triangular monolith at its center. The same type of three-pointed stones was found inside a Wisconsin earthen mound at Aztlan. All right, Aztlan, a 13th century ceremonial center, less than 200 miles south of Scott Mitchum's underwater find. The significance of these triangle stones is unknown. All right, now imagine this is at the bottom of Wisconsin Lake. When was this above the water? How long ago was this? Mitchum went on to find what he describes as workbenches used for pounding and grinding. At one of them, two tools were left on top, a hammer and a grinder. The surrounding lake bottom was profused with stone arrowheads, but in all and fishhook were made of copper. And other fishhooks he found was much bigger, four-sided, and likewise copper, right, metal stuff here. Mitchell's most remarkable encounter was with a mini pyramid, about 4 feet wide and approximately 4 feet high. Listen, because all his dives occurred between depths of approximately 30 and 60 feet, the material he found can be dated back from 4,100 to 3,200 years ago, when water tables in the upper Middle West began to rise from previously lower levels. In other words, the structures and implements he observed were on dry land prior to the 2100 BC, after which they were progressively covered by rising waters. This period tends to affirm their identification with the Great Lakes region, ancient copper barons who were busily engaged in large-scale mining operations just then. All right, and they're talking about, yes, there are ancient mines, people mining. They don't know who did it, and all this was going to Europe and Asia, and all these, what they were getting out of this, it was going all over the world. Because in its present pristine condition, the site is extremely vulnerable to vandalism and theft, it must await the final installation of security systems before its precise location is publicized. Until then, the ancient copper miner's workshop is concealed in a murky darkness that has preserved it for more than 40 centuries. All right, so, when are they going to release this, right? When are they going to protect this? What happened? Now, a lot of you guys know that throughout North America, Central America, South America, they have found many inscriptions, artifacts that they're saying resemble old world writings. And since they cannot tell you who the American Indians are, where they originated, they can't tell you that it wasn't American indigenous people that did all these petroglyphs and all these old world stone sculptures, tablets. What we're looking at right here, for example, this is the Redbird petroglyphs in Kentucky. Now, this rock art is not in its original place. We're going to read about why. And right here to the left, you guys can see a sign which is distinguishing a lot of the writing in here, supposedly. As you can see, one of them is first century Christian monogram. It says in Hebrew and Greek letters. It means Jesus Christ, Son of the Father, according to somebody, right? Then it says an Ogum Rebus. In the Gaelic language, it means the right hand of God. On the middle says sun disk, an inscription of Ra, the Egyptian sun god. It's carved here by Nile mariners. It also says on the bottom Iberian Punic writing, Libyan style of Tunisia and Numidia. Glyphs as well, South Semitic glyphs, and a sun disk, the symbol of Ra. All this is found in this rock art, and there's actually more stuff in there that they're leaving out. They're saying about 8 or 9 different old world scripts or languages in this rock from Kentucky. Just a little bit more on this inscription. It says here, Rock Art of Kentucky by Freddie Coy Jr., Thomas C. Fuller, Larry C. Meadows, James L. Swagger. This book actually goes over many petroglyphs, inscriptions found throughout Kentucky, a lot of them showing old world similarities. For example, right here is showing you Mattingly Rock Shelter. The petroglyphs are in the inner facing portion of the boulder, all right? And then we're going to go to a zoomed-in version right here, the Mattingly petroglyphs. You can see like very similar runic, like to Viking writing. Some can say that. Then you got the Tar Spring Rock Shelter showing large sandstone slab bearing petroglyphs. And this is right here, sandstone slab bearing the tar springs petroglyphs. All right. Here's a composite drawing of the petroglyphs. So we go to the Redbird River petroglyphs, as we were just talking about. Now, this is the rock before it actually fell into the highway we're going to read. This was its previous original location. So they put up a marker there, right, when they built this highway, and they try to say that this guy, this Chief Redbird, was the one who actually made the inscriptions, and that's totally false. Later on, they say, no, we didn't say that, but they clearly put it that the markings are attributed to him. So they are giving credit to him, trying to throw you off. We're going to read about that. It says, we first heard of this from Michael Hensley of Oneida, who, having been stimulated by a paper on Kentucky petroglyphs by one of us, visited the site and found the markings still clearly visible. At his invitation, we too examined the site and found the carvings on a vertical face of sandstone 16 feet above the road. And here they got a picture of it in its original location, okay? And again, this is the drawing they have right here. Drawing of the Redbird River petroglyphs. After inspecting the area, it appeared that Kentucky Highway 66 was graded to a lower level than the original ground surface. This was confirmed by Mr. Hensley, who told us that only a trail had existed previously. An estimate of the original surface would place the carvings at chest height. All right, so when they built the highway, they dug and brought the level down. So you used to be able to stand there and the rock would be right on your chest. Now, this is the part I wanted to go ahead and emphasize on this book. They admit that these carvings, right, these inscriptions were different from any of the previously reported Kentucky petroglyphs, very different, in that they were made up of sharply incised straight lines. No mention of Chief Redbird could be found in several early Kentucky histories published in the 19th century. Therefore, we contacted the Kentucky Historical Society and received the following letter. Wentworth, 1969. You will note that on our marker we say that he was a legendary Cherokee Indian. There is much legend in the area, but very little of any specific nature, and no reliable dates are available. The only thing that we can do is guess that it occurred probably about 1780, 1800. That was when settlers were first coming into the area there, although they were very sparse. All right, so again, he just admitted in 1969 they made the whole thing up. They guessed when they made that marker, attributing it to this Cherokee. So again, they're admitting that they're guessing. They don't know, so they cannot tell you who really did it. They don't know, they're guessing. A series of well-preserved linear carvings on a sandstone ledge extending from the face of a small cliff in Clay County, Kentucky has been described. The antiquity of this petroglyph has not been established. They don't know how old it is. See, they cannot tell you it was made in the 1700s. But the legend concerning the origin has been alluded to. All right, the legend. All right, this is not Cherokee, this is actually old. But what happened is that on December 7th, 1994, the 50-ton stone bearing the petroglyphs fell from a sandstone cliff above the Redbird River onto the Kentucky Route 66. All right, in 94 it fell. So they actually moved it. It was transported to its present location in Rollins Stinson Park in Manchester, where it is roofed over and fenced. The original site was enrolled on the National Register of Historic Places. Under interpretations, it says a sign adjacent to the relocation stone in Manchester states that at least 8 Old World alphabets are engraved on it. These alphabets were extinct when Columbus arrived in the New World in 1492, so they didn't even have them around in Europe still. They were extinct already. That's how old these were. The alphabets are 1st century Greek and Hebrew, Old Libyan, Old Arabic, and Iberian Punic, which probably dates from the 9th century BC. Ogham, Germanic runes, and Tifinagh, Numidian, are also on this stone. And again, you could just type in Redbird petroglyphs and you guys can find it yourself. And again, this is where they have it now. After it fell onto the highway, they moved it over here. And they're preserving it because they know it's old. I'm going to read from this magazine real quick. It's the Ancient American, Archaeology of the Americas Before Columbus. We're in volume 8, number 54, all right, issue 54. And we're reading this article, Connecticut's 5th Century Church. In the stillness of Cacapons State Forest, southern Connecticut, near the town of Guilford, masterfully carved from solid rock, stands North America's oldest Christian church. Recent epigraphic evidence found here suggests that it is 1500 years old and linked to a voyage of Christian Byzantine monks who fled from North Africa during the 5th century in the wake of the Vandal invasions. Greek and North African inscriptions, Greek copal patterns in the form of chrismons, monograms of Christ, baptismal fonts, a cathedral or throne, candelabras, and an altar have been found at the site. These items indicate that it was a place of worship, an early Christian church. The artifacts are illuminated by Libyan Arabic texts found at Figu Haj Minmon, a remote oasis in eastern Morocco in 1926. They tell of a voyage undertaken by North African Christian monks sailing toward the setting sun to Ask Shamal, the northern land, suggestive of North America. A diffusionist scholar, Frederick J. Pohl, who studied the Figuic inscription during the 1960s, placed the monks' arrival in North America at about 480 AD. All right, so you hear what they're saying? They're saying that what they're finding here in Connecticut, these relics of writing, matches with the story of somebody leaving North Africa, people who would have known that writing. What if they got it in reverse? What if they learned that here and took it to North Africa? This image right here, real quick, it says main altar with Greek Doric style plinth. To the left is fish-shaped cupule holes pattern. Both hold candles for ceremonies. And then this one says flame-shaped baptismal font representing the Holy Spirit. Here the elderly were baptized by pouring water over their heads. So how do they know it's representing the Holy Spirit, right? They add in their little Christian hijack here. Here we got another image. It says here, overflowing fountain, sculpture containing fishes. The fishes are the newly baptized Christians swimming in the waters of eternal life. So this is their interpretation of what they're finding here. This is what they're saying, a map of early Christian church site in Connecticut. And again, they're saying they're finding all these symbols, Christian symbols, and that whole Greek Christian New Testament period, right? And again, this is what they're saying they're finding here. The cupule pattern in the shape of a fish. There's many articles on this, Byzantine church or stonemason doodling. So here's a picture of it in color. These are the ruins. So there's a lot of, in New England, a lot of stone ruins, megalithic ruins, you know, what appears to be what they would call Celtic, Druid, Viking. Here's something else from the site, as you guys can see. They're saying they used to baptize people in this. The Byzantines beat the Vikings to America by 500 years, by John Gallagher. So a main altar with Greek Doric style plinth. All right, so this is what they're finding in Connecticut, guys. So there's a lot of articles written. Of course, they don't teach you about this stuff, and they keep it hidden. Now they're comparing this Celtic sanctuary at Buchenberg, Stamberg, Bavaria, Germany. Go ahead and take a look at this, like mound, you know, walls, right? And they're comparing it to these mounds in Ohio. So geometric works found in Ohio and Indiana during the 19th century by early settlers. American archaeologists believe these works to be American Indian in origin. All right, from Baldwin, Ancient America. We've read that book. So yeah, that's pretty interesting, right? Now I just want to show this map right here real quick. I know it's very small, but you see all these dots, right? Look, it says plate 3, map showing the distribution of mounds gutted by Cyrus Thomas on behalf of the Smithsonian Institution in the late 1890s. Gutted, destroyed, excavated. Look at all that. Look at all these dots. Let's zoom in. You guys can see, look at all these dots. Gutted mounds. You see that? All over the Mississippi. Look how it goes up the Mississippi, the real Nile, right? Wow. Yeah. So this book right here, I didn't mention it, but this is the book In Search of Lost America. All right. I mentioned it earlier. We had a clip of it. You guys saw all those mounds?
Now look at this terracotta. It says here, female terracotta figurine from a deposit cache, Isla Plana, Ibiza, in Spain, right? You see how it looks? Now they found the exact same thing
right here. And that's from Tennessee, a kneeling female from a burial mound near Idlewild, Obion County, Tennessee. Look at the face and the head, just like this piece right here from Spain. You see that? Same exact thing. Here's an example of the Back Creek stone. All right, we've gone over this. It says the inscribed stone found in Back Creek Mount, London County, Tennessee, as published by the Smithsonian Institution. The chief excavator, Cyrus Thomas, reported that the engraved characters on it are beyond question letters of the Cherokee alphabet, invented about 1821. It has since been determined that the symbols are Hebraic script from the 2nd century AD. All right, they try to hide it. They were looking at it backwards. They try to say it's Cherokee from the 1800s. Stop lying. That's Paleo-Hebrew. Aramaic, ancient. The Halley stone, the inscribed block, was actually found near the Lackawaxen Delaware River confluence. The inscription, shot for photo, has not yet been deciphered. All right, this is another inscribed stone they found in the Delaware River. Look at this. They haven't deciphered this yet. All right. Epigraphy. Now look at this urn right here. I'm going to zoom into it so you guys can look at it. That looks like Egyptian, right? Hieroglyphics, just like their walls. But where's the origin of ancient Egypt? So it says that this metal urn found near the confluence of the Shenango and Susquehanna rivers, Binghamton, New York. It has Punic and Egyptian style, may date to 1500 BC. All right, they found this in New York. See what they found here in New York? Where's the true ancient world? Look at this. What's that? The dragon? What's that here on the sides? You see what they found here? Take a good look. Break the spell. All right, break the spell. New York. Now they're showing this. See this little piece right here, figurine? This is the drawing. It says seated person pendant carved from obsidian found along the banks of the Delaware River, not far from Hawk's Nest Mountain by Antonia Ryder. Insert illustration is a small bronze figurine cast in Egyptian style that was uncovered in Carthage. It dates to the 6th century BC. The resemblance between the Delaware find and the Carthaginian artifact is striking. All right, it's a side view. All right, this is the one they found over there. Where's the true original one? Right here in the Americas, again, in stone. Not in drawings, in stone. It says here, engraved pebbles, Lackawaxen, Pennsylvania. It says one of the teams hauled a 500-pound granite block from a river island near where the Holly stone was found. The cut stone contained many parallel grooves and striations along its surface, as yet the markings on this stone, as well as those cut into the Holly stone, remain uninterpreted. But it is important to note that similar stones with grooves and slashes have been found throughout New England and Europe. Based on these preliminary findings, ground disturbance patterns, and possibly 2 inscribed stones, a test trench excavation was performed at a potential occupation site some 100 yards from the Lackawaxen Delaware confluence. At a depth of about 3 feet, a small inscribed pebble was found associated with tiny flakes of chipped stone. No further artifacts were found. An investigation of the area showed that many community people living near the rivers over the years had found similarly inscribed pebbles. Jody Lynn Kahn, a student at Delaware Valley Community College, brought such an inscribed stone to this center's attention. The stone is indeed interesting, for it seems to belong to the same series as the similarly 3 and 4 cooled rough engraved pebbles found in the Tras os Montes dolmens and other funeral sites in northern Portugal. These objects were either tied to the body of the deceased by the threaded holes, or else they served as charms attached to the clothing or necklace of a living person. Although the Tras os Montes examples have been previously read as Basque, it has been difficult to determine whether the ones we found near the Lackawaxen were indeed Basque or Celt-Iberian. They were, however, likely to be one or the other. Either way, it's either or, as the culture was the same. The date, if it had been a European find, would be around 800 BC. It is unlikely that the stones found by Mark and other people along the 2 rivers were forgeries, because the full implications of Celt-Iberian script were only recognized as recently as 1975. You see that people didn't even know that language. So how would people be making forgeries with that language or writing if it wasn't recognized until 1975? Furthermore, its reportage in past years has been infrequent and limited to professional epigraphic journals. Thus, the combined result of our fieldwork brought to light a cache of marked stones and an interesting deposition site near confluence of the Lackawanna and Delaware rivers. The stones were inscribed with symbols unknown to American Indians, which have been interpreted as a variety of script that was used in ancient Europe.
The book is called Forbidding History, Prehistoric Technologies, Extraterrestrial Intervention. You gotta pull out the babies out of all these books, and The Suppressed Origins of Civilization by J. Douglas Kenyon. All right. Exposing a scientific cover-up. Forbidden Archaeology, co-author Michael Kurimeo talks about the knowledge filter and other means for cooking in academic books. J. Douglas Kenyon. In 1966, respected archaeologist Virginia Steen McTire and her associates on U.S. Geological Survey team, working under a grant from the National Science Foundation, were called upon to date a pair of remarkable archaeological sites in Mexico. Sophisticated stone tools, rivaling the best works of Cro-Magnon man in Europe, had been discovered at Huayatlaco, while somewhat cruder implements had been turned up at nearby El Horno. The sites, it was conjectured, were very ancient, perhaps old as 20,000 years, which according to prevailing theories would place them very close to the dawn of human habitation in the Americas. Into the Ancient American Magazine again. It says here, Burroughs Cave, fraud or find of the century, all right? Again, this is volume 1, issue number 2. Says here, the Elliot Pendant, a Celtic goddess in Maine. We're going to read this article right here. It says, a few years ago, Walter Elliot of Grand Lake Stream, Maine, found a stone cyst that appears to be very old grave. Red ochre was present, and all other signs were also typical of the red paint culture, so common in the East, all right? The red ochre people, red paint people, check out the video I have on them. Except it had a few carved stone artifacts that appeared to be European origin. Photos of the cysts were distributed in hopes someone might help interpret the finds. Most important of these items is a slate spear point and a pendant. The slate is too soft to be a real weapon, so it obviously was a ritual object to be buried as a grave offering. One side portrays a bear with 2 spears in it. The other shows a bearded man wearing a tunic with 1 arm and 1 foot missing. It appears that the man killed the bear but lost his own life in so doing. Perhaps the cyst was his grave. It is covered with lines resembling Ogham writing, copies of which I sent to Burrow Dawson. He thought he detected a Celtic word signifying the act of striking. As it turned out, one line was natural seen in the rock, so it wasn't Ogham writing after all, and I had to withdraw Dawson's interpretation. The pendant is another matter. I was able to recognize its writing as Phoenician. Semitic languages read from right to left, so this clearly spells BNYW-TT. A side of the pendant portrays the all-seeing eye, a god of one of the best-known images in all iconography. We still use it on our dollar bill. The obverse features a human face sporting 4 rays under a moon. The moon was traditionally female, the well-known icon of Tanith or Tanith from Carthage, and was often shown with the same crescent over her head. All right, so this is the pendant they're talking about. As you guys can see, this is what they found here. The rays comprise the same icon modern artists used to represent the halo. Clearly, the pendant is dedicated to a European lunar goddess, Tanith, Diana, Artemis, etc. The pendant's BNYW so closely resembles the name of the Celtic goddess, it seems obvious that Bayanu is intended here. However, the phonetics are modified somewhat. The spelling means that the sound was B-on-O, as we might pronounce it, but more like Benyu. I'm not the first to claim that the Celtic Bainu is the same goddess as Tanith. Noted researcher Barry Fell, America BC, page 236, makes the same connection. He tells of a cave used as a temple in which was found a carving of Tanith cut into the natural rock. Beneath it appears the name Bin in Ogham letters. Fell speculates the Bayanu stems from an Indo-European root meaning she of the Joni. The Joni is the sanctus for the female sex organ, but in view of its spelling,
On the Elliott pendant, I like to offer a possible alternative. The word may be Semitic rather than Indo-European and means daughter. In Semitic languages, the termination of "a" signifies a female while "ben" means son, so "bena" could be a proper word meaning daughter. Beth is Hebrew but also means house, indicating the function of homemaker for a woman. In earlier times, before the patriarchal system was imposed and women had full equality, Bena was used instead of Beth. The sound of Ben-U could just be a Celtic accent for Bena. It is thrilling to realize that the object now known as the Elliott pendant once many centuries ago hung around the neck of a Celtic visitor to the shores of prehistoric America. All right, you guys hear that? So what if they're seeing it in reverse? What if we brought that over there? And there's another image. This is the back of the pendant, as you guys can see here. All right, with the eye, as they're seeing the all-seeing eye.
The book is called Forbidding History by J. Douglas Kenyon. All right. More than a century earlier, following the discovery of gold in California's Table Mountain and the subsequent digging of thousands of feet of mining shafts, miners began to bring up hundreds of stone artifacts and even human fossils, despite their origins and geological strata, documented at 9 to 55 million years in age. California State geologist J.D. Whitney was able to subsequently to authenticate many of the finds and to produce an extensive report. The implications of Whitney's evidence have never been properly answered or explained by the scientific establishment, yet the entire episode has been virtually ignored and references to it have vanished from the textbooks.
We continue reading from the Ancient American Magazine. This is volume 1, issue number 2. This article right here is called The Wall of a Giant City by Frank Joseph. And this is a famous wall they found in Illinois. It's called the Lewis Wall. Just real quick, it says here, spreading for several hundred acres in all directions are the natural stone columns and twisting canyon, which gave this part of the Shawnee National Forest its name, Giant City. The fabulous sheer cliffs and colossal embankments do indeed seem to have been crafted by the ogres of Indian legend, no less impressive for not having been sculpted by the titanic forces of time and water. The Lewis Wall is unquestionably man-made, but by whom? Native American tradition assigns its construction to the same antediluvian giants who fashioned the rest of the park, okay? Giants again. They were said to have arrived at the eastern shores of Turtle Island, North America, sailing rafts from the destruction wrought by a great flood, the great flood. And then giants came. Eventually they reached the Shawnee Forest, which the gods had already sanctified, partially a spot of ground atop a cliff. Here the giants erected a stone wall to mark off the area as a sacred precinct. In time they died off, but their sturdy rampart, revered by generations of subsequent Plains Indians, defied the years. The old wall perfectly bisects the top of a steep cliff, running on linear east-west axis for 285 feet, 6 feet at its highest point, with an average thickness of 4 feet. The structure is a dry stone battlement comprising an estimated 40,000 stones, weighing altogether about 200,000 tons. In view of the fact that all these stones were handed up the sheer incline from the dry riverbed 100 feet below, its construction seems all the more remarkable. The labor to build such a structure was certainly gigantic, at least on a scale of social organization. The wall was raised ingeniously by fitting together mostly flat stones, chosen for size and a rough, uniform fit. Its great age attests to the skill of its engineers. When Caesar Augustus ruled in Rome, the southern Illinois wall was new. The stone's partition's construction has been radiocarbon dated to the 1st century, plus or minus 100 years. It is the work of an unknown people who occupied the area for the next 4 centuries, then vanished for undetermined reasons. Again, you guys see the recurring theme. They try to say all these people went missing, they disappeared, they went extinct. We don't know who they are. Oh, I wonder whatever happened to these people. You're still here. That it has stood largely intact for 20 centuries in this major earthquake zone is proof of its high level construction. Here's a picture of The structure and part of the forest here in Illinois, a pile of stones it looks like, but sometimes you might run into it as actually a wall, man-made. All right, again, remember 200 tons, and it used to go on for miles. But the giant city wall is not unique. It was once part of a network of stone ramparts spanning hundreds of miles, all right? Just like I said, I told you. At least 8 other similar examples, likewise situated atop forested cliffs, were arranged in general line across southern Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and down into Tennessee. Strangely, all were built, occupied, and abandoned within the same time period. While a single walled site still stands in Tennessee and 2 of the Ohio forts survive, all the Indiana walls were demolished in the 19th century by early settlers who regarded them as handy quarries for building wells and the foundations of farms, all right? So they started destroying all these walls and using the stone for their own uses. Remember my video of all these ancient stone walls and forts in the forests here in North America. A lot in the Appalachian Mountains and region, from all the way to Canada, all the way down to Georgia. Tennessee, as they're saying here, is part of it. Just the same forts they're talking about. This wall right here has something to do with it. They were all connected during the same time period, they're saying. The same fate befell most of the Illinois ramparts, but a few are still hidden under thick woodland growth on private property. The giant city wall is the only such ancient edifice in Illinois still accessible to visitors. All right, and this is another picture right here, as you guys can see, of the structure, this wall, man-made wall. They don't know who built it, huh? It's very ancient.
The Hidden History of the Human Race by Michael Kurimeo. In the early 1950s, Thomas Ely of the Natural Museum of Canada found advanced stone tools in glacial deposits at Cheguanda on Mount Nitoline Island in northern Lake Huron. Geologist John Sanford of Wayne State University argued that the oldest Cheguanda tools were at least 65,000 years old and might be as much as 125,000 years old. For those adherent to standard views of North American prehistory, such ages were unacceptable. Humans supposedly first entered North America from Siberia about 12,000 years ago. All right, so as you can see, their chronology and their history does not fit with what has been found many times.
This presentation is...
All right, hold up. Before we get to that presentation, all right, I got a sign here I want to go ahead and get to. 1 second. Yeah, welcome. Thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate you guys doing that. All right. Hold on. Thank you. All right. We're continuing. Thanks for tuning in and being here. Got some more great information. Coming over and into the valley, the trail rises into a meadow where a lightning burn is healing. On the far side, the land falls away through the spruce. Straight ahead is sky, the sky over the great valley. There is a sweet exhilaration in coming to the summit of a pass where the brightness ahead shines through the last dark band of trees. The weight of a pack sack lightens. The hard part is done. The possible opens before us. 18th century pioneers passing over the Appalachians into the Ohio Valley wrote often of this feeling of being freed, of encumbrances, of fresh beginnings, judging from what they said, and from what has been said of them subsequently. Most of them shared the misconception that they were entering an ample emptiness intended to be theirs alone. All right? Listen to what he's saying. This wasn't yours, there was people here. And again, remember, these pioneers are not all so-called white people, okay? Let's not forget all the history. In fact, they carried more baggage than they knew. Only a few were able to cast off their preconceptions. And only after much bloodshed, the western vastness was not empty. Several 100,000 people was already there and determined to resist invasion. Nor was it without its own history, as the Europeans slowly acknowledged after encountering profusion of very large ruined buildings. Whatever may have been the Edenic expectations of the newcomers, it became obvious that the Indians of the valley were the survivors of much larger populations. Hey, what's up, everybody? So I just wanted to start reading right away, but just want to say hi. Thanks for tuning in once again. Today we're going to be reading from this book. We was just reading from it. That was just a little bit of the introduction. This book's called Hidden Cities: The Discovery and Loss of Ancient North American Civilization. Roger G. Kennedy. Okay? And it says, the world of the first Americans was richer, greater, more wondrous by far than most of us have ever imagined, or than most histories have ever even implied. Few realize that some of the oldest, largest, and most complex structures of ancient archaeology were built of earth, clay, and stone right here in America, in the Ohio and Mississippi valleys. Ohio, the start of it all. Gonna have a future video on Ohio. From 6,000 years ago until quite recently, North America was home to some of the most highly advanced and well-organized civilizations in the world, complete with cities, roads, and commerce. From the lost city of Balbancha near New Orleans to the Great Hopewell Road, a causeway for religious pilgrims along the Ohio River in the 13th century. This is way before Europeans came, supposedly, right? A pilgrimage causeway along the Ohio River, 13th century, 1200s, okay? That's the 1200s. These cultures built hundreds of thousands of structures, of which a small but tantalizing portion still remain. Like the Druids of Salisbury Plain, they patterned extraordinarily precise geometry according to the rising and setting of the moon. Like the ancient Egyptians, they organized millions of hours of human labor to construct pyramids, platforms, and plazas. So here's a picture of Roger G. Kennedy, pretty important guy, actually, when I was doing research about him. I'm going to read to you a little bit what it says here. It says, and remember, this is the author, right? So he's the director of the National Park Services. He was basically under Bill Clinton. That's why that was his job under Bill Clinton's administration, and is the former director of the American History Museum, all right, director at the Smithsonian Institution, okay? He is the author of Rediscovering America, 1990, and Orders from France, the Americans and French in a Revolutionary World, okay? He's also saying he was a polymath whose career included banking, television production, historical writing, and museum administration, the last as the director of the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of American History. This is the guy who wrote this book we're about to read. He's about to tell us he's about to drop some bombs on everybody. And it's not the first time we hear about him. We actually have shown him in a documentary video. We're going to show that real quick right now, a little segment of it.
While serving as the director of the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History, historian Roger Kennedy was shocked to learn, for the first time, that massive ancient city remains existed in North America.
very, very few of us were conscious of the immensity of a place like Monk's Mound at Cahokia, opposite St. Louis, which is bigger in its footprint than the Great Pyramid at Giza. We didn't know that.
Most Americans have no idea that ancient cities with advanced architectures once dotted the ancient North American landscape.
Not trying to get a copyright because of that background music, but yeah, that's a documentary where we know, of him, the same author we're about to read. All right, so he's saying there was major cities here, aligned. There was advanced civilizations here in ancient America, and that's a great documentary. We've shown the whole thing in different parts and the whole thing in different videos. Him talking right there, giving a little, the drop right there in the video and the documentary we've shown before. That's a great documentary. We've shown the whole documentary in different parts of my videos, like all of it many times. So make sure to go back through my old videos, and you'll especially the Untold Ancient American Truth series. You might run into that whole documentary. So go ahead and check it out. We return now to the book Hidden Cities, The Discovery and Laws of Ancient North American Civilization by Roger G. Kennedy. So earlier we were in the introduction again, and we were talking about how the Indians of the valley were the survivors of much larger populations, even along the headwaters of the Ohio, on the banks of mountain brooks. There were signs of ancient habitation in the form of small burial mounds. As the streams grew larger, so did the buildings on their banks. Below Pittsburgh at Grave Creek in what is now West Virginia, a conical mound is still today 2,700 feet, 251 meters in circumference, and 70 feet, 21 meters tall. It was built by Indians while Rome was young. While Rome was young, huh? What if Rome was over here? Scores of structures almost equal to its bulk still remained, offering the commentary of the elders upon the coal dumps and slag heaps of the Rust Belt as the flares of disconsolate gasworks flicker where beacon fires once blazed. In the Ohio and Mississippi valleys, tens of thousands of structures were built between 6 and 66 centuries ago. 66 centuries ago. All right. They might be even way older than that. That's what their dates they give them, based on their radiocarbon dates, right? Again, but in the Ohio, Mississippi Valley, tens of thousands of structures, all right? Tens of thousands of structures, some as large as 25 miles in extent. 25 miles? Do you hear that? 25 miles in extent required over 3 million person hours of labor. A lot of people to work that, or maybe not. Maybe they had a smarter way to do it than just through massive labor of many people, like they show us, how they build the pyramid supposedly. So in one of my parts in Untold Ancient American Truth series, we go over these books regarding the mounds. Great information. Make sure to check those out. Go back to that series again if you're into this whole hidden history, archaeology, and all that, especially in Americas. That's a great series. And we've gone over some great books that corroborate with what we're reading right now, from the Smithsonian's director, okay? Sometimes even so late as now, one of us may have experience as unexpected and full of wonder as those of the first French trappers and British traders when they came among these structures. In the summer of 1991, I was in a cave searching beneath Indiana for a source of a white mineral called aragonite, which was much favored for sculpture by the Ohio Valley Indians of the 3rd and 4th centuries. I had passed through a succession of caverns and slippery, narrow passageways. There had been no graffiti for half a mile, and I permitted myself the proud thought that I was the first of my species to come there. Then my heat lamp showed on the floor the twisted fibers of the butt end of a torch, and there were sandal marks in the dust. I was late by a millennium and a half. This discovery should not have come as a surprise to me. But though I have been writing American history for nearly 50 years, it was. Others know about the cave, and as the graffiti, some more than a century old, demonstrate, all the knowers were not scholars. But as I talked with friends about the probability that Indians were seeking stone for sculpture in Indiana caves, while the Emperor Augustus was losing legions in the German forest, I found that I was not alone in my ignorance of America's ancient past. He's realizing, he's like, wow, what is all this stuff I'm finding? He had access. Remember, this is an important dude, whatever his connections were. He had a lot of titles. Again, a polymath. What is a polymath? It says that a polymath is an individual whose knowledge spans a substantial number of subjects, known to draw on complex bodies of knowledge to solve specific problems. So, Von Woven defined polymathy as knowledge of various matters drawn from all kinds of studies, ranging freely to all the fields of disciplines as far as the human mind. All right, so this is the kind of guy that's writing this. So he's admitting that he was ignorant on America's ancient past. He has all these connects, so he's realizing something. This book began with my discovery of the torch and sandal marks. They led me to learn as much as I could about the people who left them in that cave, and also by why only a few specialists seemed to be informed about them. What did the first European explorers and settlers know about ancient America? Why was that knowledge not passed on? Why was it not passed on, expanded, revised, and made a necessary prelude to American history? Is he snitching on himself? You were the director, bro. The antiquities of Mexico or of Egypt are far better known than those of Indiana, Illinois, or Ohio, and not because they are larger or more ambitious intellectually. Okay? He has a very strong point, and this is what I was saying earlier. There's a future video, and this is why we're getting into this right now. I want to show you guys how deep it goes, right? We go step by step. We're going to show all the correlation. Again, I got a future video on Ohio, Illinois, and Indiana, all these places what they found in these caves, along the rivers, on the mounds, all that, because nobody has really done it. As he's saying here, this is director of the Smithsonian, director of the museum and everything. As I have learned, there is as much to say about your American lack of understanding of Indian history as there is to say about the Indians themselves. The first generation of Western colonizers had little to prepare them for the possibility of ancient cultures as they came into the upper reaches of the Ohio Valley between 1770 and 1810. Daniel Boone did not read Spanish, and he knew only what he had been learned of the West by the French and by the Charleston traders. Remember, Charleston, South Carolina, Huguenots who had traveled to the Mississippi before he came into Kentucky. The traders had come out of the Southern Carolinas, all right, traders, merchants, and reached the Mississippi, South Carolina, by routes which happened to bypass all the major mound centers. Though the French had been installed around Nashville for decades, in terrain full of ancient ruins, they did not provide forewarning of massive archaeology to their competitors from Carolina or Kentucky. They were mercantile folk, all right, businessmen. They didn't care about the mounds. These businessmen, who was these early pioneer businessmen, huh? Neither by training, inclination, nor the beguilements of leisure were they to be diverted from their goods and ledgers. None of these early merchants, like I said, they were calling them traders, and as I told you, they were really just merchants. Who were the merchants? Sephardic Jews, crypto Muslims. A lot of these people were the merchants, as they were telling you right here, especially when we're dealing with people from South Carolina. A lot of them are Huguenot, Moorish people, Sephardic Jews. They had the money, they had all the shops, all the trades. And it makes sense that, you know, as they went out, they were looking to make more money. They didn't really care about archaeology or, you know, preserving these mounds or studying them. So again, none of these early merchants was leisured, and none seems to have had the time for wonder. So from the 1680s until the 1770s, antiquity slumbered as commerce fretted and scratched overhead. Antiquity, it is true, had only recently gone to slumber as time was counted in the valley. It had been wide awake when in 1539 a Spanish expeditionary force led by Hernando de Soto hacked and burned its way through active mound building cultures from the Georgia Piedmont to the plains of Texas. All right, do you hear? Hernandez Soto, he's a Sephardic Moorish Jew, okay? And then he brought 600 soldiers. We have a book, we've read about that. 600 soldiers. And look what he was doing again, hacking and burning through all these mound building towns, cultures from Georgia to Texas. But antiquity was silent soon enough. The would-be conquistadors who emerged into the Appalachian Providence from Florida left a legacy. Though they did not establish colonies, their legacy was disease. After their microbes strong to accelerate the destruction already underway by those already loosed by sailors and slavers along the coast upon the Indians, all right? They weren't, who were they enslaving again? And what coast? Not the Guinea coast. Over here, right? Indians, remember, who did not have the appropriate antibodies. An unbroken Indian tradition of many centuries was removed from the scene. It had been destroyed not by force of arms. De Soto's Entrada was a failure, but by the silent, insidious actions of European plagues. That's what they were bringing. De Soto was the first force of Europeans to enter the watershed of the Ohio, a region of the British later called the Western Waters. And Boone, even had been fluent in Spanish, would have learned little about what to expect in the West. The Spanish interest in its culture was limited to what pillage might be gotten from its temples and palaces. De Soto's study of its architecture did not go beyond determining the best means to storm its fortifications. So his chroniclers lavished little language upon accounts which might have forewarned the English or the French or Boone about the ancient buildings of the West. Not until the end of the 18th century did some Euro-Americans begin to show real curiosity in the history of their land and its peoples. Some of the seekers and invaders who entered under the flags of Spain and Great Britain were pinkish in skin tone. All right, listen to this. This is a major drop he's about to drop. Hold up. Are you guys ready? Because I know people will be thinking I just be making things up when I'm talking about these so-called black Europeans, right? So listen to what he says. It says, some of the seekers and invaders who entered under the flags of Spain and Great Britain, right? English and Spanish, right? Were pinkish in skin tone. Others were brownish. Again, others were brownish or blackish, so-called blackish, blackish, brownish, swarthy what? Spaniards, Great Britain, or English. Remember, a lot of these are the same people because they're just cryptos. They're the same people. Again, the director of the Smithsonian Institute, this guy knows a lot, a polymath, right? They call him a polymath. He's letting you know he knows the truth. We got others that are brownish or blackish, and I bet you there's a majority of brownish or blackish over the pinkish. Some were free, some slaves. Again, some were free, some slaves. That includes most likely the pinkish ones too. Don't just think the pinkish ones are the free ones. The pinkish ones could be the slaves. Some indentured servants or slaves for a term. The pinkish ones, masters or servants, discerned themselves as distinguished by skin color from the darker peoples among them. All right, he's told you right here. The pinkish ones, both servants and masters, discern themselves as distinguished by skin color from the darker peoples among them. All right, darker peoples among them. Who was coming over here? Not just white people or pinkish, as he's calling them. All right, again, the director of the Smithsonian Institute. Go complain to him. So they wanted to distinguish themselves from the darker people among them, whether slave or free. All right, darker people who were free, they weren't all slaves, and they weren't Africans, and from the people already present in the valley. The races were then said to be white, black, and red, though of course not a single person so described was or is in fact white, black, or red. Listen to what he's telling you right here. Crayon colors. The color scheme was artificial, but within it were categorized people
of an infinite variety of colors. Infinite variety of colors. We're talking about Europeans. They didn't just come looking so-called white or pinkish. They had an infinite variety of colors. Okay? Rewards and penalties were meted out for no better reason than occupancy of one or another of those artificial categories. One of our primary themes will be how, in the valley, these people, newcomers, and those who had been there for thousands of years, played out their prejudices about each other. The occasions of grace. They had the benefit of a shock of discovery. In a few instances in human history has architecture been so important in altering the impressions of the nature of one people in the eyes of others. The founders had not anticipated that they would find in the West large, sophisticated, and ancient work performed by the kind of people still resident there. That architectural evidence was too obtrusive to be ignored. The new cities of the Central Valley, Cincinnati, St. Louis, Marietta, Portsmouth, Lexington, Pittsburgh, Natchez, and Nashville, had to be built by clearing away evidence of older ones. In the countryside, there were hundreds of thousands of earthen reminders of prior habitation. There still are tens of thousands. Listen to what he's telling you here. The shock of these discoveries forced upon the founders the possibility that Indians were not all savages. The founders knew nothing of ancient Africa outside of a little learning about Egypt. Had they known something of it at the time they were becoming acquainted with ancient America, they might have enlarged their sense of Negro possibility considerably farther, and by extension their apprehension of what other darker-skinned people, such as ancient Americans, again, dark-skinned people such as ancient Americans might have done, the sense of other Negro possibilities considerably farther, not just in Africa. Listen to what he's letting you know right here. All right, this is a major drop. What other darker skinned people, such as ancient Amarucans, dark skinned people, ancient Americans might have done, but they were neither so fortunate nor so bold. Nah, they didn't want to. We are so fortunate. Right now, we're fortunate. We're learning. Whoever's listening to this right now, again, this is the director of the Smithsonian. Listen to what he knew, right? Same people are the ones hiding all the stuff, right? All the art, what they finding. So maybe what he's doing is doing a confession while he's writing this, so he can have a clean heart, or so he can just feel like at least he tried to tell everybody. He just couldn't do it publicly, right? He had to write a book about it. He's letting you know, right, to think outside the box, okay, outside of Africa, of other darker skinned people, such as ancient Americans. We are so fortunate right now, though, to know this, and we may be so bold, okay? We have to be bold. Knowledge of the past may help alter the present. Listen to what he's saying. All right, he's making a confession. In chapter 1 now, the book Hidden Cities, the founders of American architecture, the cultures that nourished them, and the great dying. The architecture of the Mississippi watershed is as old as that of Egypt. Say what? Okay. As old as Egypt, or even older, we're gonna see. Okay. Especially in Ohio and Louisiana and all these areas, they have places that are way older than ancient Egypt. But it's as old, at least, as Egypt. So where's the real Egypt if we're talking about as old? Though composed of other materials than the sandstone of the pyramids, the monuments of the Mississippi are as large in size and as regular in shape. Indeed, one of the most noteworthy qualities of ancient American architecture is that some of its forms were so regular that they were replicated precisely in locations many miles apart. The first very large buildings created in North America were constructed about 6,000 years ago. Most were made by moving earths in baskets woven of vegetable fibers. These baskets used throughout the valley for architectural work were as large as the wagons, wicker pack sacks,
Many 19th and early 20th century Americans carried on canoe trips. Some of us can still recall how heavy they were when filled. Several million baskets were filled with heavy clay for the construction of each of many structures in West Virginia, Louisiana, and Illinois. Despite so much exertion, the eroded contours of these monuments are not today very impressive. After thousands of winters, plows and pot hunters have done their work upon them, they sometimes appear to be little more than discouraged hillocks, about the shape of a rain-drenched haystack. A few, however, remain very grand indeed. Careful cross-sectional archaeology reveals the layering within these ambiguous shapes: brown earth and often red clay, earth again, perhaps one or two more tiers or lenses of red-black charred remains of buildings, ritually fired, we may assume, and still more earth, some of it so densely compacted that the fibrous markings of the baskets are still stamped upon it. The Spanish and French who first saw these hillocks found it difficult to believe them to be the deliberate creations of mankind. They were so much larger than any work or architecture known to them. The entire facade of the Palace of the Louvre in Paris can fit easily within the space surrounded by D-shaped earthen rings at Poverty Point, Louisiana, built at the same time as Stonehenge. All right, that's how old Louisiana is. Stonehenge is debatable. That might have been built in 1900s. The Papal Basilica of St. Peter in Rome, complete with its plaza and gardens, could be placed within the circular embankment of Watson Brake, which is probably at least 1,000 years older than Poverty Point. Oh, that's old. Watson Brake, huh?
That's really
All right,
old.
so let me just show you guys Watson Brake. All right, here's a little drawing of it. I just want to show you how old this is. Watson Brake is an archaeological site in present-day Wichita Parish, Louisiana, from the Archaic period, dated to about 5,400 years ago. That's from their carbon dating, so it could be even older.
Yep.
Watson Brake is considered the oldest earthwork mound complex in North America.
Oldest.
You know the sources here. It is older than the ancient Egyptian pyramids.
Okay.
Older, all right, than Egypt. Older. You got people building mounds, right? Way before ancient Egypt, right? How do you have time to build mounds and settle down? You got to have an advanced agricultural civilization.
Yep.
Where you don't have to be out all the time trying to survive, hunt, and not get killed.
Let them know.
Where you can build mounds and practice religious ceremonies or do whatever they like in their free time.
Sports.
Creating mounds, that's a science. This is way before Egypt. Wake up. Wake up.
Wake up.
All right, so back in the book, that's what they were talking about. Watson Brake. All right, the Papal Basilica can fit inside that. That's how big it is, man. That's how big that place is, which is almost 6,000 years ago. Now listen to this. The Mayan calendar opens with a mythic date of 3,372 BC. So that's before even Sumerian and Egyptian history. By that time, the people of the Mississippi Valley, by that time though, even though the Maya started there, by that time, the people from the Mississippi Valley were already creating monumental architecture before anything so ambitious had been built in Mexico, Central or South America.
Yep.
Earthen buildings were arranged in strict and repeated geometric patterns along the bayous and channels in what are now the states of Louisiana and Mississippi. In the Mississippi Delta, two of the earliest complexes, which can be dated with much precision, lie near Monroe, Louisiana. The Hedgepeth Mounds are on the Bayou d'Arbonne, about 20 miles to the northwest, and probably were built around 4,500 BC. All right, these ain't savages, advanced civilizations over here. Above Frenchman's Bend on the Bayou Bartholomew, 15 miles northeast of Monroe, are a row of mounds whose carbon dates establish them as about 1,000 years younger. That's 3,500 BC. On the campus of Louisiana State University at Baton Rouge is the most ancient evidence of the propensity of humans for architecture to be found so conveniently to learning anywhere in the world. Two
conical mounds, the larger about 130 feet in diameter and 16 feet high. The rich organic soil of which was put in place about 3000 BC, rich fertile soil, right? What is that? Kemet, rich black fertile soil. Kemet, rich fertile black soil was put in place about 3000 BC. 6 miles north at Monte Sano, 2 even earlier conical mounds were destroyed in 1967. They included platforms probably used for cremation and a structure built on posts about 20 feet square, which may well have been the oldest wooden building of which the plans are clear. They destroyed this stuff. They destroyed the evidence of the true old world. They destroyed this stuff.
Tell them.
A close approximation of what such plans might have been can be derived from the Montesano post molds, where the posts have decayed, leaving spaces subsequently filled by earth compacted differently from its surroundings. What a treasure! And it was protected by the compassionate earth until people of our generation saw fit to destroy it. They destroyed it. This is the director of the Smithsonian Institute and American Museum. Okay, he's snitching. He's confessing. The story of the 5,000-year-old mounds at Frenchman's Bend is, so far, happier. A remarkably sympathetic developer recently agreed that its principal building will not become the 7th tee of a golf course. All right, that's a big one. A lot of these mounds, where the mounds were, they made golf courses out of them. I recall poignantly the day that concession was made and how proudly he drove away in his Land Rover, more worthy of the best Abercrombie and Fitch could provide than any competitor in the Mississippi Valley. 5 mounds are still discernible along the edge of the fairway. You hear this? The largest, a low, haystack-shaped cone about 130 feet in diameter and 10 feet high. It's a golf course now. The relationship of the 5 to each other appears erratic, but appearances may not disclose lunar or solar alignments, or some other order and principle we do not yet understand. About 5,000 years ago, monumental American architecture began to be created in circular or half-circular, D-shaped forms, the largest of which are so striking that they justify calling the ensuing 3 millennia in American architectural history the Age of the Rings.
Right, so this book goes in depth on many of the mounds found into Poverty Point, and the other one we talked about Cahokia and all of that. Again, I've gone over all this information in past videos. We're going to go over it again, but I wanted to go into this topic right here. It says forts ancient, and a lot of the mud flood, Tartaria followers, you might find this interesting. And there's all kinds of these structures and walls and like what looks like fortifications in the middle of the Appalachian Mountains and forests and in the southeast and other places of the U.S. They have no explanation. A lot of the time they say they were built during the Civil War, but as we're about to read, they're actually way older. It says here, forts ancient. It is not love that comes to mind when one comes to the hilltop citadels in Ohio and Kentucky. Wow. A citadel is a fortress, right? European experience would seem to justify our thinking of these as castles, demonstrating a decline into the Dark Ages after some Pax Hopewelliana, a darkness gleaming only fitfully upon Indian Kings Arthur and Charlemagne. Indian King Arthur? What are they talking subliminal here, Mr. Director of the Smithsonian? What are we talking about? What is he talking about? You already know.
The Byzantine surrogates lurking in the Delta and rough Teutonoid tribes ready to swoop in upon Hopewell seniors, fortifying their villas. Sad to say, scientific archaeology has forced jettisoning this romance of barbarians in a feudalized Midwest. Radiocarbon dates for these forts are from 100 to 400, all right, AD. You understand what they're telling you? These walls, these forts they're finding are from 100 to 400 AD. Their radiocarbon says so.
Yep.
So they weren't built by no Europeans. They were already here.
Middle Ages.
Now that's a date they're giving it. They could be even way older. All right. Even though 100 AD, 400 AD, are you serious? Forts, brick walls, and all that. While Adena Hopewell cultures were thriving, copper breastplates, mica sheets, pearl beads, and effigy pipes shaped as birds or bears or beaver have been found in the hilltop forts of Kentucky and Tennessee, interred apparently at roughly the same time as those found amid the geometric earthworks of Ohio. Do these fortified encampments, sometimes alone, sometimes seeming to be guardians of the classical octagons, circles, and squares along the Payne, the rivers of Kentucky, and along the Ohio from Cincinnati to Portsmouth, mean that architecture became militant, or perhaps apprehensive? Were these indeed fortified settlements, or were they ceremonial spaces bounded by stone? And what are we to make of other roughly contemporaneous enclosures on the loomy bluffs above the Mississippi?
My fault, guys. Let's say all roads lead to Rome, right? All right. These are roads. These are literally fortifications on the roads.
All right, so listen to what he's going to say. I think there are answers to be offered to these inquiries, but they are answers of the imagination. They belong, therefore, in chapter 11, right? So that must be a good chapter because we got to read it, right? Some of these rock-walled enclosures, again, some of these rock-walled enclosures lie on terrace tops above major waterways. Those that do not guard instead very old trails from waterway to waterway. So it has something to do with keeping people safe on their journey, right? On the roads. And then cross-country to the sea. If they're forts, right? The route over which presides Tennessee's Old Stone Fort apparently began in Ohio. All right, listen to this. A stone fort, a wall. What is it? A wall. We're talking about a wall fortified, what they call rock-walled enclosures or an old stone fort, apparently began in Ohio on the Scioto. Then it crossed into Kentucky, listen, on its way to the Nashville Basin, and then crossed the Cumberland to Scale, and then descend the highlands to the Tennessee River at Bridgeport. From there, it made its way across Georgia to the Atlantic coast at or near St. Augustine. You hear that? You see that route? You see how long that wall was? And again, he told you already, this is the director of the Smithsonian, it was built in the AD 100 or 400s. Okay? That's his radiocarbon, their radiocarbon, right? That we got to trust. But it still is older than the Europeans, right? So it was built, it was already here. And look how big it was. Look how long it went. How much distance it covered. When it was mapped in 1684 by the French as part of an effort to show that La Salle had conquered all this for King Louis, it had been in use for at least 1 millennium and probably for two millenniums, 2,000 years. This road, this wall, 2,000 years, this wall.
Uh-oh.
The Florida outcome is indicated by the presence in Hopewell burials in Ohio of ornaments made of shark and barracuda teeth from Florida, to which we have already given some attention of Ohio, shirt tools in Florida, and as well by the evidence of intellectual exchange, the similarities in dimension among the circles incised into the earth at Fort Center in Florida and raised as embankments at Newark and Circleville. All right, so now I want to bring you to this book real quick since we started talking about these stone walls, right? And hidden cities, these mystery cities, these, what's going on in these forests, right, in North America. This book is called Mysteries of Ancient America, Uncovering the Forbidden. Uncovering the Forbidden. This is by Fritz Zimmermann. And we go to the very first chapter of this book or topic. It's called Ancient Cities. And it says here, and they're calling they're giving the letters up here, so they're going to be talking about the letters. It says A, B, C, D, outer walls is inches in thickness, length 56 feet, breadth 22 feet. The walls are built of rough, unhewn stone and appear to have been constructed with remarkable regularity. E is a chamber 3 feet in width, which was no doubt searched the whole way, as some part of the arch still remains. It is made in the manner represented at 3 and is seldom more than 5 feet above the surface of the ground, but as it is filled with rubbish, it is impossible to say what was its original height. F is a chamber 4 feet wide. In some places, the remains of similar arch style remains. G is a chamber 12 feet in width, at the extremity of which are the remains of a furnace. All right, so basically what they're doing is describing what they're finding here. They're gonna tell you real quick what this is, and they're saying they're found human bones in this place too. It says here the Centennial History, 1877, the Commonwealth of Missouri, Centennial History. The early writers upon the antiquities of Missouri make frequent mention of the ruins of buildings which were constructed of unhewn stone and whose walls were said to have been built up with credible skill and strength, though without durable mortar, if indeed any were used. Of this kind of structure, the examples are very rare east of the Mississippi. Whether any are now to be found in any good degree of preservation is quite doubtful. I will present therefore such facts concerning them as can be gleaned from the most trustworthy accounts of early writers. The first to be noticed are thus described by Mr. Lewis C. Beck, who, after speaking of the pine timber which abounded 50 or 60 years ago along the Gasconade River, and the sawmills erected upon its banks, by which the lumber was prepared for the St. Louis market, goes on to state that near the sawmills and at a short distance from the road leading from them to St. Louis are the ruins of an ancient town. Listen to this. It appears to have been regularly laid out, and the dimensions of the squares, streets, and some of the houses can yet be discovered. Stone walls are found in different parts of the area, which are frequently covered by large heaps of earth. Again, a stoneworks exists, as I am informed by General Ashley, about 10 miles below the mills. It is on the west side of the Gasconade and is about 25 or 30 feet square. And although at present in a dilapidated condition, appears to have been built with an uncommon degree of regularity. It is situated on a high, bald cliff, which commands a fine and extensive view of the country on all sides. From this stonework is a small footpath running a devious course down the cliff to the entrance of a cave, in which was found a quantity of ashes. The mouth of the cave commands an easterly view. All right, built facing the east. It would be useless at this time to hazard an opinion with regard to the uses of this work or the beings who erected it. In connection with those of a similar kind which exist on the Mississippi, it forms an interesting subject for speculation. They evidently form a distinct class of ancient works, of which I have as yet seen no description. Another group described by the same author was located about 2 miles southwest of the town of Louisiana. They are built of stone with great regularity, and their side is high and commanding, from which I am led to infer that they were intended for places of defense. Works of similar kind are found on Buffalo Creek and on the Osage River. They certainly form a class of antiquities entirely distinct from the walled towns, fortifications, barrows, or mounds. The regularity of their form and structure favors the conclusion that they were the work of more civilized race than those who erected the former, a race familiar with the rules of architecture and perhaps with perfect system of warfare. The description of those works located near Louisiana is accompanied by a ground plan or diagram made by the Reverend S. Giddens, a former clergyman at St. Louis, of which figure 1 is an exact copy. All right, so here's another view of the drawing. The ancient city was located between bends of the Ohio and Kanawha rivers. Cabell County, West Virginia Annals and Families, 1935. When the first white settlers came, the land was covered by forest. But at Green Bottom, they found well-defined evidence of streets laid out at regular intervals and intersected at right angles with other streets. Listen to this.
Yep.
Ironton Register, May 5th, 1892. Where Proctorville now stands was one day part of a well-paved city, but I think the greater part of it is now in the Ohio River. Only a few mounds there, one of which was near the C. Wilgus mansion and contained a skeleton of a very large person with
Uh-oh.
all double teeth and sound and a jawbone that would go over the jaw with the flesh on of a large man. The common burying ground was well filled with skeletons at a depth of about 6 feet. Part of the pavement was of boulder stone and part of well preserved brick. All right, so we're reading these little clips from these articles. You can actually verify the sources if you like. I'm gonna start showing you guys. Shout out to Analog, his Twitter account.
Yeah.
The brother always shares
The archivist.
information with me. He has a lot of great.
It's the archivist now on Twitter or X, the archivist.
Newspaper articles, old ones he has found with crazy information. I'm going to show you guys. I put it all together. Continues his catalog of prehistoric works east of the Rocky Mountains by Cyrus Thomas, 1891. At Sades, opposite the mouth of the Cold River, there have been found evidences of a very large city, much larger than Charleston, okay? Large city, larger than Charleston. There are also carved stones in different places on the river. Earthworks or fortifications are also found several places, both on the Kanawha and on the Cold River. All right. And I get another one here. It says Lost City, buried beneath present-day Lexington, Kentucky. All right. It says there's a Dina burial mound located near Lexington, Kentucky. This is the image. Look at that. And it says George W. Rank, writing in 1872, also discussed this lost city, buried beneath Lexington. I quote from Dr. Rank: "The city now known as Lexington, Kentucky, is built of the dust of a dead metropolis." All right? There was a metropolis there, of a lost race, so-called lost, huh?
Nope.
Of whom name and language and history not a vestige is left. Oh, they don't know, right? How convenient. They never know, right?
Still
What
here.
happened? Even the bare fact of the existence of such a city and such a people on the site of the present Lexington would never have been known but for the rapidly decaying remnants of ruins found by early pioneers and adventurers to the Elkhorn lands. The testimony of the learned Professor C.F. Rufinsky of Transylvania University fully corresponds with this and proves the former existence in and about the present Lexington of a powerful and somewhat enlightened anti-Indian nation. Anti-Indian nation. Kentucky's first historian, John Filson, tells us of stone sepulchres at Lexington, built in pyramid shape. Listen to this. They tore all this down and still tenanted by human skeletons as late as 2 years after the siege of Bryan's Station. They are built, says he, in a way totally different from that of the Indians. Early in this century, a large circular earthen mound about 6 feet in height occupied a part of what is now called Spring Street between Hill and Maxwell. A stone mound which stood not far from Russell's Cave in this county was opened about 1815 and found to contain human bones.
All right, hold up. Human bones, huh? Yeah. So guys, that was the presentation for today. It's already been about an hour and 45 minutes, trying to make the videos long, but not too long where people won't sit through them. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I can go on hours and hours with clips, old clips and books we've read and everything. 1 second. Yeah. We're gonna go out with DIY or do it yourself. Do it yourself. Robin Dre Beats. All right, shout out to Robin Dre Beats for the beat right here. Appreciate everybody that came through. Appreciate all the new members. All right, appreciate you guys being part of the club. All the donations. Thank you. Appreciate all the Patreons and everybody's been following me for a long time and supporting. Really, really appreciate it. Hope you guys enjoyed today's information, and I hope you guys share it and like it, and catch up on the older videos if you're new. There's so much information we've gone over before. Uh, so again, thanks for, sticking around and hearing me read, being patient with me like that. Appreciate it. Giving me your time. Much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Oh, wow.
Robert Dre, trust me, bye.
Wow.